My name is Paul Wood. I'm a writer on trees, and this morning I'm talking to Monica Feria-Tinta, who is a barrister. And Monica, perhaps you could explain a bit more about your work.
So today, I think it's a special day because Paul came to my chambers, 20 Essex. We are in the heart of the legal quarter, and two worlds are meeting in a way, because obviously I'm very aware of your amazing work bringing trees to the attention of people and the enjoyment of trees in urban spaces. And I work in the field of environmental law. And also I'm a specialist on nature protection, nature rights. And we will be discussing a bit the, whether there is a right to green, whether there is also a relationship with trees, a connection that we have with trees that may be protected under the European Convention on Human Rights.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you have a potential test case in the future, which is not at that stage yet, but you've been involved in advising the campaign to save Chester. And Chester is a London plane tree growing in Southend-on-Sea in Essex. And that's something which is a potential focus and is a story which resonates with me and probably with many other people that have been involved in trying to protect individual trees in cities particularly. Chester, who I've not visited yet, but hopefully today I will meet Chester,
We will, yes.
is a tree which has, in your interpretation of the law, could be that the relationship which people have with Chester is of such importance that it could be defended through human rights laws around the rights to privacy.
Yeah, it could be defended in a court of law, and it could be argued that it is protected by Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights. And let me tell you more or less where this awareness came from. I had the personal experience with a tree where I live, and in actual fact it was an oak tree, 150-year-old oak tree, very close from from my bedroom really. I could see the tree every day. I realized I developed a relationship with the tree because I could see the tree first thing in the morning. I wrote my book, you know,
book is A Barrister for the
A Barrister for the Earth. It's been published by Faber. It's been published in April, and in the book I described what happened. Is that basically the tree fell during a storm. I had already had a relationship with this tree for a year. The appreciation of the presence of the tree I had already developed throughout that year. And all of a sudden then it just fell.
Had you realised that you had this relationship with the tree before it fell? Or was the impact of it falling where you began to really understand how important that tree was to you?
I think both aspects are certainly there, because number one, I knew every day, you know, I was looking for greeting the tree because the light will come. There's a lot of sun, let's say, on the branch. It was all mossy.
Yeah.
There were a lot of species that came to the tree, and I could see them really close.
Yeah.
So I greeted the tree.
Yeah. The birds,
everything, and I would talk to the tree. And so I was conscious of this relationship and this appreciation. So it was not that I saw my tree as in a way that I didn't realize that this was important for me. On the contrary, and I was grateful. I remember every day, you know, I was grateful to look at it. But then with the loss, I realized how deep that connection was, because all of a sudden when it was gone, I felt I was in mourning.
Yes.
And you know, it was really there.
I know that feeling. I've known many trees over the years, which I've felt a very close affection and affinity with, that have sadly fallen or been felled for one reason or another. And what you were telling me is that that experience gave you the ability to understand what the people who were trying to protect Chester were thinking about, and you were able to think about that in legal terms, essentially how we could protect that individual tree and many others like it through. So Chester is threatened with being cut down for development, I understand, and Chester is the last remaining London plane on a very long urban stretch of road which would once presumably have been tree lined. So to lose Chester would be a very dramatic end to trees on a particular street. It would mark the triumph of development over nature, and the people who are trying to protect Chester realise or have a very important relationship with that tree and want to protect it because it is the last vestige of green in an urban environment. And that's where you're coming in to say, let's look at that legally. And what I understand is your legal thinking is that Chester could potentially be protected because of the relationship that Chester has with those people who are trying to protect Chester.
Yes, so I think that this brings a focus on a connection.
Yeah.
And that connection, in my arguments, is something that the law protects.
Yeah.
And how? First of all, is our understanding of what's human.
Mm-hmm.
So there may be an approach that considers that you can interpret human rights, for example, the European Convention of Human Rights. You can construe what it means to be human in a separate way from nature.
Yes.
It's like in an abstract way, you take human beings outside their natural living surroundings, and you think that to describe what it means to be human can be separate.
Yeah. So it seems to me that...
Which is wrong. I think that approach is wrong.
Yeah. But I suppose that as human beings, as a species, we have evolved with nature, and nature has been fundamental to how humans as a species have been so successful. And perhaps we're losing sight of that. And maybe there is a legal basis for reassessing that and saying, no, we are humans, we are connected to nature, and that connection is so fundamental to our specieshood that it is protected in the law.
Precisely. So that's my argument. My experience working with people I have decades of experience working in human rights, have given me some insights into human nature. And I have seen that in context, for example, where people are in solitary confinement, where you really inquire, what makes you human? And in those contexts, I've seen the fundamental need of human beings to see something grow. And they living in deprivation of being able to see that. A plant, one single plant growing, has, in my experience, caused great harm and suffering to an individual deprived from that. So my question was why? And this has helped me then to get closer into the studies of biologists, and it's clear that we as a species have been able to evolve, our brains have evolved surrounded by other creatures, animals, and also nature, plants and woodlands and everything that is wild. So we cannot take ourselves as a species, outside. We have this fundamental need to be in contact with that world. and we are capable to develop a relationship, just as people develop a relationship with a pet, a dog, a cat. We develop relationships with other forms of, other life forms, such as a tree.
Yes.
And in my experience, my relationship with the oak tree that fell in my neighborhood, was a friendship.
Yeah.
This tree was fundamental to part, of my emotional support. I would say was a friend. And in the case of Chester, I could recognize exactly the same elements when I spoke to my clients, and it showed me that there was a connection. Now, under Article 8, the law protects, number one, our sense of self, identity. And you could imagine that identity can be removed from this context. I would say no.
Yeah.
I would say that sometimes it can be very conscious, and we know that our sense of identity can be, in a very literal way, can accept that we need contact, for example, with the natural world, and it's in the context of that communication with the natural world that we feel our self our sense of self is full.
Yes.
And that necessarily has to be protected by the law.
Yes.
Because it is linked then to our right to start to have that connection, to be able to have an ongoing communication with that world, because it's fundamental for our sense of humanness, but also is palpable in our everyday life, and therefore linked to our well-being, to our mental health. And apart from that, I think is also, is even, goes farther, because under Article 8, relationships are protected. Now, some people may think, okay, this is only issues concerning other human beings, family.
But this is where, this is potentially the contentious part of it, isn't it? Where we're then saying that the relationships with nature are as fundamental as the relationships with other human beings. And I suppose that the law, as it stands at the moment, doesn't recognise plants as having their own agency or their own akin to personhood. So that seems like it's very anthropocentric in that way, but that really is just because the way that the law is constructed, it is anthropocentric, it's not recognising yet the rights of nature, in a sense that they have unalienable rights as humans have.
But this argument, the one that I am developing right now, as I'm explaining that, is I'm talking about rights from the perspective of this particular individual that develops a relationship. Now, it is with living entities. Doesn't matter. So we are not right now talking whether that tree has the right to be in communication with me. We are talking about my right as a human being to be, to have respected all the needs that I have, and whether the natural world will be, therefore, a fundamental element for me to exercise that right.
Yes.
And I'm saying that it is. And therefore, so when we analyze those connections that the law protects, usually starts with family. Now the law has extended that to other living beings, right? That are fundamental to, so there are intimate relationships, connections. Maybe not someone that is blood related to us, but nevertheless a human being that we are close to.
Yeah.
And so that relationship may be protected as well. Well, my argument will be that it doesn't need necessarily to be a human being. It could be also, other forms of life.
A tree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if we have a defined relationship, then, and it is fulfilling human needs that go from, that will be part of our intimate connection with the outside world.
Yeah.
that will be protected under Article 8.
Yeah.
So it's really understanding properly what it means to be human, what is fundamental to us.
Yes.
And the Convention on Human Rights necessarily has to protect that.
Yes. So the potential is a test. Well, the next step really to sort of test this is a test case. And whilst Chester's the immediate threat to Chester has receded a bit, as far as I understand it, there is still potential that if Chester was threatened with imminently going to be felled, then this is where a test case could come in, where we could look at, or rather you could defend the rights of the humans who benefit from their proximity to Chester in their everyday lives.
Yeah.
And the benefits that Chester provides them is something that we could test in a legal situation.
Yes, and I think that it is time that we acknowledge that profound connection.
Yes. That
profound connection that is vital to our sense of humanness, and that we are not separate from, and that's why this suffering is very clear when people lose. Or I think, in my own personal case, that's what I witnessed.
Yes.
I observed that I was suffering because my tree was gone. But here went because of natural reasons. But when it is, for example, just cut, and this relationship is not even considered among the various balancing rights that you may need to consider.
It needs to be embedded in planning law as well.
It should, and I think to an extent there is, and we were discussing this a little bit earlier, about this rule that now planning experts are increasingly taken into consideration at the policy level in Europe, which is the 330-300 rule.
Yes.
This rule by which a citizen should be able to see at least 3 trees from their home, live in a neighborhood with at least 30% tree canopy cover, and be within 300 meters of a high quality green space.
Yes.
So this is based on really scientific studies that understand well-being, human well-being.
I believe this comes from the University of British Columbia, doesn't it, in Canada, I think.
Netherlands,
yeah,
where they were quite amazed that over there, for example, these are clear rules.
Yeah.
And so Europe is already taking this up, and this is because of the scientific studies about well-being. Of course, there are other ways how green has to be considered when talking about human rights, that go beyond what we just discussed. And now there are climate obligations, clearly defined climate obligations on the part of local authorities, governments, that has to consider the value of having a canopy, green areas, and when it comes to how we live in urban spaces.
Yes.
And for example, in a coastal town, it's going to be fundamental for resilience.
Yes.
It's fundamental to consider when hot weather now is unpredictable, how people can survive in contexts where the temperatures are rising.
Yeah, and in England, I believe that a lot of coastal towns have very low canopy cover compared with cities that are inland. And I don't know why that is particularly, but it's something which seems to be common to those cities, and I think Southend is one of those, isn't it? Where the tree canopy cover is lower than it is in, say, the west of London, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, it's more extreme than that. Southend is a deprived town economically, and there is a very worrying, correlation, which is that there is a green deprived town as a consequence.
The tree equity of Southend is low compared to places which are economically wealthier, where there is a lot of studies have gone into the correlation between the canopy is higher in wealthy places than in less economically wealthy.
Sure, and if we think about England, so we're talking about that they are below, they have a canopy that is below the average when it comes to a general assessment in England. So, but what is the impact on health is the question, and there is scientific studies and acknowledgement even by the council that the life expectancy will reduce if you don't have trees around. So this rule that we were talking about before, I mean, makes sense because it's so linked to that, is to the psychological well-being of seeing trees through your windows, the capacity to be able to, if you have a green area, to be able to go and play if you're a child, to be able to go for a walk. So all these access to green that is fundamental then to health.
All these things, in a way, seem so obvious, don't they? So it seems obvious that people have a connection with trees. It seems obvious that there are benefits of green space, and yet the law is so far behind, and the law is really what people, developers and so on, depend on in order for them to be able to make these bad decisions for whole communities, maybe good decisions for businesses, but not for the whole communities that live around them. And the law perhaps needs to be reinterpreted or shifted to have greater impact on individuals and communities that live within green spaces or with green spaces.
Well, absolutely. I think we do have a wrong, I think, understanding of what is human. And I think, and that is then reflected on, wrong policies, wrong law that can imagine progress in a very wrong direction. And I think that really civilization, and to be civilized, would necessarily take into account all what we've been discussing, because there is clear evidence that that's the best context in which we can thrive as a species. So yes, I think that there is a need for reinterpretation even of the law that we have. Of course, Paul, that I do think that even within an anthropocentric legal framework, as we are, when we talk about human rights, let's say, we still have to understand the proper meaning of humanness. And in any event, is at present not enough, clearly, to have a purely anthropocentric perspective of everything. We do need to understand that ultimately an ecocentric perspective is the correct one, the balanced one. And I think that the world slowly is realizing that, and I'm one of the lawyers, as a barrister, of those who believe that should be vigorously pursued, because otherwise we risk losing the little bit we have left in the world that is absolutely essential for an earth that drives. Because what is happening is the degradation of that world really is, where we are. It has taken us where we are now with the biodiversity crisis, with the climate crisis, etc. So there are some issues about the fundamental relationship that we have with the natural world that we have to reconsider.
So to summarise, Chester is one tree in Southend, but could be of immense importance to many, many people beyond Southend. So I think we watch this case with interest, and I'm sure we hope for the best, and we hope that your view of the human rights laws can help to protect Chester and all humanity.
Totally. And I thought
Thank you.